My name is Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. I was born on the eastern shore of Maryland. I do not know the year. I do not know the month. I was never told. That is the first thing they take from you, your beginning. The second thing they take is your mother. They sent mine to work on a farm 12 miles away. She would walk those 12 miles after sundown, lie down beside me until I fell asleep, and walk 12 miles back before sunrise. If she was discovered missing, she would be beaten. I saw my mother 4 times in my life, maybe 5. She died when I was 7. I did not know she was sick. I was not allowed to be there. They take your name. They take your mother. They take your birthday. And then they tell you that this is the natural order of things, that God made you this way. I decided to take something back.
Welcome back to After Hours. I am Vaughn. On September 3, 1838, a young man stepped onto a northbound train in Baltimore, Maryland. He was 20 years old. He was wearing a red shirt, a tarpaulin hat, and a black scarf tied loosely around his neck. He looked like a sailor. That was the point. In his pocket was a piece of paper, a seaman's protection certificate, a document issued by the United States government that described the physical characteristics of a free black sailor. Height, build, scars, complexion. The physical description on that paper did not match the man carrying it, not even close. If anyone looked carefully, if anyone compared the face to the description, the man would be arrested, returned to his owner, and likely sold to a cotton plantation in the Deep South. The paper was borrowed. The name on it belonged to someone else. The eagle stamped at the top was real. Everything else was a lie. The man's real name was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. He was an enslaved person fleeing for his life. And that borrowed piece of paper, that letter of protection that did not belong to him, was the only thing standing between him and a lifetime in chains. Within 24 hours, he would either be free or he would be destroyed. This is Episode 10, The Letter. Frederick was born sometime in February of 1818 on a plantation in Tuckahoe, Talbot County, on the eastern shore of Maryland. His mother was an enslaved woman named Harriet Bailey. His father was a white man. Frederick believed it was Aaron Anthony, the plantation overseer, but he was never told and never confirmed it. He was separated from his mother as an infant and raised by his grandmother, Betsy Bailey. At the age of 6, Betsy walked him 12 miles to the White House plantation and left him there. He never forgot that walk. He never forgot looking back and seeing his grandmother disappear down the road. At around the age of 8, Frederick was sent to Baltimore to live with Hugh and Sophia Auld. Hugh Auld's brother Thomas had married into the family that owned Frederick. This transfer to Baltimore would change everything. Sophia Auld was new to slaveholding. She did not yet understand the rules. She was kind to Frederick. She sat him down and began teaching him the alphabet.
A, B, C, D. Say them with me, Frederick.
A, B, C, D.
Good. Now these. E, F, G, H.
E, F, G, H.
Hugh Auld discovered what his wife was doing, and he erupted.
What are you doing? Are you teaching that boy to read?
I was only showing him the letters, Hugh. He is a bright child.
A slave should know nothing but to obey his master, to do as he is told to do. Learning would spoil the best slave in the world. You teach that boy how to read, there would be no keeping him. It would forever unfit him to be a slave.
Frederick was standing in the room when Hugh Auld said those words, and something happened inside him. Years later, he would write about this moment as the single most important event of his childhood, because Hugh Auld, in trying to preserve slavery, had accidentally revealed its secret.
In that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom. It was literacy. That is what the white man feared most. Not my body, not my strength, my mind. If reading could make me unfit to be a slave, then reading was the weapon I needed.
Sophia Auld was ordered to stop the lessons, And under the corrupting influence of slaveholding, the woman who had been kind became cruel. She would snatch any book or newspaper from Frederick's hands the moment she saw it. It did not matter. Frederick had learned the secret, and he devised his own school. He made friends with the white boys on the streets of Baltimore. He carried bread with him whenever he left the house, and he traded bread for reading lessons. Hungry street children would teach him new words in exchange for food.
I would say to them, "I bet I can write better than you." And they would write a letter on the wall. And I would copy it. And then they would write another. And every day I learned more. My copybook was the brick wall, the board fence, and the pavement. My pen was a lump of chalk.
With 50 cents he earned from odd jobs, Frederick bought a copy of the Columbian Orator, a book of speeches and dialogues published in 1797. Inside was a dialogue between a master and a slave. The slave had been caught after running away 3 times. The master lays out every argument for slavery, and the slave refutes every single one. The slave does not ask for kindness, he asks for liberty. And the master, overwhelmed by the slave's arguments, frees him. Frederick read that dialogue over and over. He carried the book with him everywhere. He memorized the speeches. He was, at the age of 12, teaching himself not just to read, but to think, to argue, to fight with words. And from that moment, freedom was the only thing on his mind. At the age of 16, Frederick was sent back to the Eastern Shore by the Aulds and placed under the control of Thomas Auld. Thomas found Frederick's intelligence and dignity intolerable. So in January of 1834, he sent Frederick to a man named Edward Covey. Covey was a slave breaker. That was his business. Slaveholders sent him their most defiant, most difficult enslaved people. Covey would break them through exhaustion, surveillance, and violence. In return, he got free labor for a year. It was a system designed to destroy the human spirit. For 6 months, Covey beat Frederick regularly. He worked him from before sunrise to after dark. He stalked him through the fields, appearing without warning, striking without reason. Frederick was broken. He later wrote that his intellect languished, his desire to read had left him, and the dark night of slavery closed in upon him. Then one August afternoon, everything changed. Frederick was working in the treading yard, where horses were used to separate wheat from straw. At about 3 o'clock, he collapsed. Heat exhaustion. Dizziness. His head was splitting. Covey found him on the ground.
Get up.
I cannot. I am sick.
I said get up.
Covey kicked him. When Frederick tried to stand and fell again, Covey picked up a hickory stick and hit him over the head, opening a gash that bled freely.
If you have got the headache, I will cure you.
Frederick fled to Thomas Auld to beg for protection. Auld sent him back, and a few days later, Covey came for him in the barn. He grabbed Frederick as he climbed down from the loft, threw him to the ground, and tried to tie his hands for a whipping. This time, Frederick fought back. He seized Covey by the throat. He rose to his feet, and for nearly 2 hours, the 2 men wrestled and struggled. Covey called for help. Another enslaved man named Bill refused to intervene. A hired white man tried to help Covey, and Frederick kicked him in the ribs. Finally, Covey let go, exhausted, defeated.
Leave. Get back to work.
Covey never touched Frederick again, not once in the remaining 6 months, and he never reported the fight to anyone, because admitting that an enslaved man had beaten him would have destroyed his reputation as a slave breaker. Frederick wrote about this moment for the rest of his life. He called it the turning point in his career as a slave.
This battle with Mr. Covey was the turning point in my career as a slave. It rekindled the few expiring embers of freedom and revived within me a sense of my own manhood. My long-crushed spirit rose. Cowardice departed. Bold defiance took its place. And I now resolved that however long I might remain a slave in form, the day had passed forever when I could be a slave in fact.
After Covey, Frederick was returned to Baltimore and put to work as a shipcaulker in the shipyards at Fells Point. He earned wages, but every cent was taken by Hugh Auld. Frederick was producing wealth that he would never touch. But in Baltimore, he met a woman named Anna Murray. Anna was a free black woman from Denton, Maryland. She had been free her entire life. She worked as a domestic servant and had saved money for 9 years. She and Frederick met through the East Baltimore Mental Improvement Society, a group for free black people. They fell in love, and Anna decided that Frederick would not remain enslaved.
I have saved money for 9 years. I will give you everything I have. I will sell my featherbed. I will sew you a uniform. You are going to walk out of this city and you are never coming back.
The plan was dangerous, but simple. Frederick knew the shipyards. He knew how sailors talked. He knew ships from stem to stern. If he could look like a free black sailor and carry the right papers, he might be able to ride the train north without being stopped. A retired black sailor, a man Frederick knew from the waterfront, agreed to lend him his Seaman's protection certificate. The paper had an American eagle stamped at the top and a physical description of its owner. The description did not match Frederick. Not at all. If anyone read it carefully, the deception would be obvious. Anna sewed the sailor's uniform. Red shirt, tarpaulin hat, black scarf. She gave Frederick every dollar she had. She sold her featherbed and added that money too. And on September 3rd, 1838, Frederick walked to the Baltimore train station. He did not buy a ticket at the counter. That would mean standing in line, being examined, being questioned. Instead, he waited until the train began to pull out of the station and jumped onto the moving car at the last moment.
I found this seat in the colored car among other free black travelers. I adjusted my hat. I smoothed my scarf. I held the borrowed paper in my pocket and tried to breathe.
The conductor entered the car. He moved down the aisle, checking papers, one by one, getting closer. Frederick's heart was hammering. The paper in his pocket described a man who was not him. If the conductor looked carefully, if he compared the description to the face sitting in front of him, it was over. The conductor reached Frederick. He held out his hand.
Papers.
Frederick produced the certificate. The conductor glanced at it. His eyes were drawn to the eagle. The large, impressive eagle of the United States government, stamped at the top of the document. It looked official. It looked real. It looked like authority. He did not read the physical description. He collected the fare and moved on. But Frederick was not safe. The train had barely left Baltimore when he looked across the car and saw a German blacksmith he recognized, a man from the shipyards, a man who knew Frederick was enslaved. The blacksmith stared at him. Frederick stared back.
He knew me. I am certain of it. He looked directly at my face, and I saw recognition in his eyes. But he did not call out. He did not alert the conductor. He never said a word.
At Havre de Grace, the passengers crossed the Susquehanna River by ferry. On the ferry, Frederick encountered another acquaintance who began asking questions. Where are you going? What ship are you working on? Frederick had to talk his way free without arousing suspicion. From Havre de Grace, the train continued through Delaware, still a slave state, then a steamboat from Wilmington to Philadelphia, then a train from Philadelphia to New York City. Less than 24 hours after jumping onto a moving train in Baltimore, Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey stepped off a train in New York City. A free man. He was free, but he was not safe. Fugitive slaves were hunted in the North. Slave catchers roamed the streets of New York, grabbing black men and women and dragging them south for bounty money. Frederick was alone, terrified, and had nowhere to go. A black abolitionist named David Ruggles found him. Ruggles ran the New York Vigilance Committee and had sheltered an estimated 600 fugitive slaves at his home on Lispenard Street in Lower Manhattan. He took Frederick in. Frederick sent word to Anna Murray. She traveled from Baltimore to New York with everything they needed to start a life: a featherbed with pillows and linens, dishes with cutlery, a trunk of clothing. On September 15, 1838, 12 days after his escape, Frederick and Anna were married by Reverend James W.C. Pennington, himself a man who had escaped slavery. Ruggles gave them $5 and told them to go to New Bedford, Massachusetts, where Frederick could find work as a caulker. When they arrived in New Bedford, Frederick needed a new name. Bailey was the name of an enslaved man. It was the name slave catchers would be looking for. His host in New Bedford, a man named Nathan Johnson, had been reading a poem by Sir Walter Scott called The Lady of the Lake. In the poem, there was a character named James of Douglas, a fugitive, a hero who fights his way back from exile.
Douglas, that is the name for you. A man who fought his way to freedom deserves the name of a fighter.
I will take it. But I keep Frederick. I will not lose the only name my mother gave me.
Frederick Douglass, the man who taught himself to read on the streets of Baltimore with a lump of chalk and a stolen loaf of bread. The man who fought a slave breaker to a standstill and reclaimed his manhood. The man who rode a train through slave country with a borrowed piece of paper and an eagle that no one looked past. He would go on to become the most famous abolitionist in American history. He would write 3 autobiographies that exposed the machinery of slavery to the world. He would advise Abraham Lincoln. He would fight for the rights of women, of immigrants, of every human being denied their freedom. But none of it would have been possible without a woman named Anna who sold her featherbed, a sailor who lent his papers, a blacksmith who kept his mouth shut, and a borrowed letter with an eagle on top. Frederick Douglass never forgot how he learned to read. He never forgot that Hugh Auld's attempt to keep him in ignorance was the very thing that set him free. And he never forgot the words he wrote about the moment he decided to fight Edward Covey.